Hello, today is July 17th, and today I'd like to talk about decisions versus choices. It's actually a topic that had come up years ago when I was talking to a fellow hypnotist, Craig Mackay, and we recorded a podcast like ages ago. Probably almost like 6 years ago, that talked about and one of the topics was the difference between decisions and choices. And I think that idea kind of sat in the back of my head for a long time. And it kind of bubbled up back into the surface when I was working on this program, thinking about languaging and understanding how words really have very specific meanings. And I think like some of the meanings, like if you were to like just think, it's like, what's the difference between making a decision versus making a choice? And like colloquially or like casually speaking, you might be using these things kind of interchangeably. At a deeper level, if you really like think about what the process through making a decision versus making a choice is, there is some significant difference. So that's one of the things that I'd like to talk about today. And then I'll finish off with my reflection on where I'm at in this whole process of building Haizhen, and thinking of the idea of a job description for what I'm doing right now. So we'll get into that later on. So what is the difference between a decision and a choice? So one place to start could be etymology. So I didn't look up the etymology of choice, but for decide, I thought it was really interesting. The etymology is like the root or kind of where a word comes from, and the root of decision or decide is to cut, to kind of like cut out all of the other options. And when you're making a decision, that's kind of the vibe of that idea. You're looking at all of the different possibilities, and then eliminating the possibilities until you're left with one. So it's a process of elimination and leaving yourself with just one final decision. That is the kind of thing that you'll like, okay, like this is what I'm choosing because all of the other decisions are not good. So or like all of the other options are not things that I want. So kind of like eliminating everything else and then picking the one that's left. Choice, on the other hand, is about specifically just going for what you want. So you might have 4 or 5 different choices, or four or five different options. But making a choice is not about is like this one better than another one, and that's why I'm choosing this thing. Choice is very much like, this is what I'm choosing. I'm choosing to do this, regardless of all the other things that are available. Like they might be perfectly good choices for various reasons. And for whatever reason, it's like social media is a really, really interesting thing because like this thought has kind of like been rolling around in my head for the last day or two. And then this morning I got a TikTok that was talking about how to make decisions. And this person was offering basically like if you were to make a decision between two things, like let's say there's 2 chocolate bars, they're the same chocolate bar, you don't have to make a decision. You can just choose one or the other because both of the options are basically the same. So it's like a choice. You're not eliminating one, you're just picking one versus the other. Now, if you have 2 separate things, then you're kind of having to decide like, oh, do I like this one better? Do I like that one better? What do I actually like before making that choice? And usually this is kind of like if you think of chocolate bars, there's like so many different kinds. In the video, there was Snickers and some other chocolate that I'm not really familiar with. So let's say there was Snickers, there was a Mars bar, there was a Coffee Crisp, there's a Crunch bar. How do you decide? You might think like, oh, like I don't want any nuts, so I'm going to get rid of like Snickers, and I think Crunch has nuts as well. So then you cancel out those suggestions, and then you're like, I don't really want coffee today, so I'm not going to go for the Coffee Crisp. All I'm left with is a Mars bar, so that's my decision. That's making a decision. But if you're making a choice, you look at the 4 options and you're like, I want a Crunch bar. I haven't had that for a while. That's what I want. All of the other options are perfectly fine as well, but that's what I want. So that kind of process is almost like if you think of like, oh, I have to make a decision, I have to pick what's best. There's a lot of maybe pressure to make the quote unquote right decision, not to like cut off all of the other things. And when thinking of like what the right decision is, usually we think about maybe like what the different factors that are at play. Like, oh, like if I choose this one, then this thing might happen, and then like I might like um, like this whole cascade of effects could happen from this one decision that I'm making. Whereas when you make a choice, that doesn't really, those things don't matter as much because you've made the choice. It's like, this is what I want to do. This is what I go full tilt, wholeheartedly into, and you make that choice, right? So that's one way of looking at the difference between decisions and choices. I think what happens in our daily lives is we're asked to make a lot of decisions. We have to weigh the pros and cons, the pluses and minuses of all these different things, and then finally come to a place where it's like, okay, the reason that I'm choosing this thing is because all of the other things are not useful, not what I want, or they don't really fit the kind of description of what I'm going for in whatever that decision that you're trying to make is. What that kind of can then lead to, unsurprisingly, is a lot of like anxiety and worry and kind of like, oh, like I have to think through all of these things, and what if I make the wrong choice? And what if like I don't have all the information? And what if, and what if, and what if, and what if? Like you can really spiral down like a really deep and dark rabbit hole of like just freezing yourself because it's like you're getting frozen with choice. You're getting frozen with indecision because you're like, I don't know if this is the right thing for me. And that's absolutely okay. Like that's kind of where we find ourselves if we don't like consciously think about it. So um, feeling like we have to make a decision, I think, is kind of the way that we do a lot of our decision making, right? We're making decisions rather than making choices. So what if we flip that and just started considering things as choices rather than decisions that we have to make? Then the question doesn't become like which one's better or which one's worse. It becomes what do you want? Understanding what the outcome that you want is will help you get to the choice that will lead you to that outcome. So if you want a certain thing, then you only have maybe a narrower band of choices. So one way to flip that is when you're thinking about like decisions and it's like, oh, like should I like let's say you're trying to choose a program to learn something or to go to school, like what do I want to study? And it's like, oh, like, well, this school is good because of this, and this topic is interesting because of that, and you're doing all of this stuff. Uh, but you're ignoring what you want. Like, what do you want? And oftentimes that will bring you much closer to a decision. That's kind of where human design is really good as well, because that strategy and authority is really there to help you make choices. Um, I think it's often presented as a decision-making authority. Um, but like if I reflect on it and think about the words a little bit more, I think it's more about helping you understand what the right choice for you is. It's a choice that you're making to follow your um, authority and your strategy, right? Even in simpler terms. So I think like we get stuck in making decisions because it seems like there's so many options, right? Um, if you go under the assumption that you are one of a kind, unique, you have something, you basically have decisions or choices that are aligned with you. And there's maybe a spectrum of choices and decisions that are good for you, right? And then there's things that you wouldn't choose. And sometimes, like, we get into patterns where we continue to make the choices to do things that are not good for us. Um, and that's okay as well, because that is a whole other layer of like, where did that decision originally come from? Where did that choice originally come from? And I think that there's a lot of layers there that you could peel away and unpack, which we're not going to get into today. But human design is also really good for conceptualizing that, of understanding that there are layers of conditioning that we take on, things that we learn, and ways that we learn to interact with our world and our reality, so that sometimes we kind of end up repeating patterns. Anyways, we'll talk about that another day. But if you're looking at, if you take the assumption that you are like, there are choices that are meant for you that will align with you, that are better for you, which will kind of make you feel more yourself. It's almost like if you were living authentically, what would you be doing? And if you do those things that are aligned with you authentically, then you will feel more authentic and more like yourself. So the way that I think about decision making is, rather than having a lot of decisions, the question is, which choice is the one that is right for you in the moment, or right for me in the moment? And that's really just looking at all the different decisions and just saying yes or no to them. And that's where strategy and authority can come in. So, for example, myself as a projector, my strategy is to wait for the invitation. So, rather than saying like, oh, I have all of these things that I could do, and go, I'm like going out and pursuing all of them, and like kind of exploring all of these different things. Um, to wait for the invitation is to do the things that are important or interesting for me. So, for example, like making these videos, I'm enjoying them. I like what I'm doing, so I'm going to continue to make them. And then by putting these out there, it will invite invitations for people that also resonate with this. So then they will recognize and they will see, and people may reach out because of this video, this thing that I'm doing. So then those are the opportunities that will come to me. What does that look like, practically speaking? Well, like, if I were to think of just past examples, even applying for jobs, right? If I apply for a job, it's not to say like, I really want this thing, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to prepare in the best way that I can and show up for that interview and prepare a resume and cover letter and all of those things. But those things, to do those things, is not to say like, this is like, these are the reasons that you need me, come and get me, and I'm like expecting that. Because if I operate from that place, there's that, like, rather than putting myself forward, I'm trying to put myself forward in a way that um, puts a very specific image of me forward, which I think is what we end up doing. But the best image to put forward, I believe, is the one that's authentically aligned with you. So if you can show up as yourself in something like a resume or a cover letter, and then also in your interviews, then you've done all the work that you can, right? Then it's up to the other person's decision, in my case, of like, do I am I recognized? So then I will get invited. So then if I receive a job offer, for example, then that's an invitation in to do whatever that job was. So that's strategy, and like, all the different types of different strategies. We'll definitely go into that in more detail at some other point. And that will be part of the Haizhen transformation, right? To understand your specific type, your specific strategy, your specific authority. Really, in that work, you can focus just solely on your own experience. But having all of those other flavors and different tastes that appear as well will give you access to understanding other people. So then it's just a layer of like, oh, like if this person is not like me, right, then maybe they interact in a different way. So strategy is one thing. Then authority is the part of like making decisions, not from the mind, not from pros and cons, but from all the information that I've received. What does the right answer feel like? And basically, that decision-making authority is a yes or no authority. It's either yes, this is aligned, or no, this is not aligned. And following that, rather than saying like, oh, let's take chocolate bars as an example. Which chocolate bar do I want? It's not like, oh, well, this one's good because of this one's good because of that. Like, you know all of these things intuitively, potentially, or somebody will give you information to help you make a choice. So then you look at each one and say, do I want this? Yes or no? Do I want that? Yes or no? Do I want that? Yes or no? Do I want this other thing? Yes or no? And then now you've taken instead of making a decision between four different things, you're making four choices, whether it's yes or no to this, yes or no to that, yes or no to this other thing, yes or no to that other thing as well. Is one way of looking at it. It's that idea of binary again that came up, I think, a couple days ago. if you that's one way to kind of look at it. The other way is just to kind of look at all of these things and just ask yourself yes or no, and you will naturally be drawn to one of those things. And if it's no for all of those things, then you could just choose to do none of them as well. What happens is when you are making decisions and there's only two options, then you're always choosing. Think about that. If you are making a decision and there are only two options, you are always making a choice, because when you decide to get rid of one item and go with the other one, that becomes your choice. You're basically choosing the one that you chose and not choosing the one that you didn't choose. So it's not like a process of elimination. You could very easily say, I'm just choosing this one option out of two. Because basically it's like the same thing, right? Like either way, you've said yes or no to one thing and yes or no to the other thing. So thinking about things rather than decisions and getting frozen up is to step back and lean into something like strategy and authority. Like if you have your own way of making decisions, let me know how this kind of resonates with you, right? If you don't know what your decision-making authority is presently, you can get a chart. The link will be in the description below. And when you find out your type and read a little bit about your strategy and your authority, I'd be curious to hear actually how that already aligns with your decision-making authority. What's been interesting in having these conversations with people about human design and then considering especially strategy and authority is that for the people who really like take the time to just reflect, it kind of becomes immediately apparent, which is to say like, oh yeah, like when I make decisions that I like, then it's kind of like going with a gut feeling and not overthinking things and all of this stuff. And when I end up like making decisions that I that aren't really good for me, it's because I've overthunk it, overthought about it. It's one of those words, I think, or none of them. And like I've kind of like decided against what my gut was telling me or what my intuition is telling me. Those are just two examples of different authorities, either like a sacral gut response or a splenic intuitive hit. Super interesting stuff. That's definitely where we'll go into much more detail in the Haizhen transformation program itself. So really think about how you're making decisions and choices and consider like some of these other guides and all of that. That's one of the things that I really love about human design is no matter how far you get into it, whenever there's like a question of like, what do I do? What is right for me in this moment? It's always back to strategy and authority as a first step of like trying to figure out what's going on. So that's decisions versus choice. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about job descriptions. As I'm putting all of this together, one of the things that I find kind of makes me a little bit lost is that freedom to do everything. When you're putting together your own program, when I'm putting together this program, it's like an entrepreneurial venture. It's like a business that I'm looking to put forward. And it's like if you are a first-time entrepreneur, first time going into business for yourself, you might find that there's no rules. And for someone who grew up in a household that was very structured and then lived in a society, a cultural construct that is also very structured. There's always rules. There's like, I've always worked under some kind of organization. I've had jobs and stuff like that. And basically there's a job description, like a loose description of the sets of things that you'll be doing, right? So it's like you go start a new job. Maybe they're like, here's your laptop. These are the meetings that you go for. This is like blah, blah, blah. Like these are the SOPs and everything. But when I'm kind of here on my own doing this thing, it's like I got to make all of this stuff up myself. I'm figuring it out. So I was thinking of like, maybe what would be helpful. So what I'm finding is like I'm going around like, okay, like I have these like things that I know need to get done. And sometimes it's like kind of like moving around from one thing to another. And I'm like, I don't know if this is like, should I be doing this right now? Should I be doing that right now? Should I be doing this other thing right now? And initially it's kind of fine because I think it's good to have that freedom of decision making where it's like I'm not tied down to doing anything in a very specific certain way. The other side of it though is like after doing this for some time, so it's been like it's been months, but it's been like over 30 days for doing these logs. And one of the things of talking it out is one, identifying the amount of time that I'm kind of spinning around the same ideas or coming back to like, like, great. Like what I've noticed, if you go back and watch some of the past logs, what I start to notice when I listen back to these things is like, I have phases of like, yeah, this is great. I'm gonna do this and this and this and this, and I have like all this plan and like, I'm ready to go. And then on the other side of it, I will go and then like there are other ones where I'm like, oh, like it's kind of like I'm a little bit lost and like kind of feeling in an in between space and like all of that. And I think that what that signals is like, okay, like I'm moving around, I'm kind of doing the same things, and I'm getting stuck in the same place. So now that I'm getting like noticing that, I'm thinking that it would be good to have like a description or a job description of the things that I myself should be working on or doing as I'm kind of like moving through my process of doing this. Now, sure, like there are lots of ways and lots of people that have done this before, and there's countless courses and coaches and mentors and things like that that will do things like suggest different ways of doing it. And like if you follow those things, then you will get those same outcomes. And that's a little bit of a shortcut, like into getting like I don't know, like getting momentum and moving forward. At the same time, because this is like my own thing, listening and taking those lessons, I think, is important. Um, but also because it's my own thing, I want to kind of do things my own way. And I'll say that I'm going to point to my human design as the culprit here. With the fifth line heretic, it's kind of like the fifth line is the heretic line. It's like heretical, which means kind of wanting to do things in my own way and differently and finding like those non-standard solutions to whatever the problem is. Inevitably, probably what happens is like I'll spin around, try and figure things out in my own way, and then kind of like look back at the things that I've learned or some of the coaching and training, and it's like, oh, like, like this structure is helpful for me. Let me kind of like lean into that, feedback into that. But at the same time, I have that little bit of a rebellious side somewhere deep down inside me where it's like, oh, you told me that I need to do it this way. Well, maybe I want to do it my own way for a little bit, just to be just to be oppositional, just to be a little bit odd. And I'm okay with that. Yeah. So that's part of the process. But I'm thinking like a job description, writing down some of these tasks to do on a regular basis would be helpful. Would be helpful. So I'm excited about thinking about what that kind of looks like. What I am noticing is that over the last little while, as I'm starting to put these things together, all the different pieces that seem to become important for me in this moment are starting to reveal themselves. So that's what I'm going to continue to lean into. So that's kind of the space that I am in today on this 17th of July. I'm What did I also do? I think a couple other wins is I think I shared yesterday that I've had some people say like, oh, like, or some interest in following along with my program, and I like that. Like that feels really good to me, and I want to kind of do more of that. So then I've had a couple other people express interest in the past. I'm going to reach out to them at some point when the time is right. I will choose the right time to reach out to them. Yeah. So that's all good. I've taken like the last couple days to pause a little bit in terms of like social media and promotion. And what I actually did was start to outline my program, which is really exciting. I've outlined this program like three or four times. But what happens is the outlines that I made, I think I went too far in depth. And like I want to bring that depth to you in this program. And at the same time, I would love to give you something that you can use right away. Like the process of change and transformation, I don't believe is hard in the traditional sense. I do think that it is a discovery, like a self-discovery process, something that will take some time because there's so many layers. Like you are a being of infinite potential. Your depth and your mystery and like the core of you, who you are, is not something that is simplified into one word or one sentence. That's not the way that we are. We are these multi-dimensional, wonderful, infinite beings that live in this, in this reality that we call, um, I don't know what you call this reality, but we live in this reality that we all hang out in. And um, why am I telling you all this? I think that that depth is kind of important to understand, and it's something that will take time. So the Heisen transformation really is a process for you to continue to move towards the state that you want to manifest in. Yeah, that's it for today, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.